Welcome back to Bunny Trails, everyone. I'm Dan Pugh. This week, we bring you a retro episode. We thought it was time to revisit this one, Beware the Ides of March. In listening back, I can see why we decided to tighten up the format. While I love the back and forth with Shauna here, I feel like we go off on too many bunny trails. Though, in fairness, we know we do that. That's part of why we named the show Bunny Trails. Still, I like to think we have taken the format and pruned some of the casual conversation, but not too much, and strengthened the cool knowledge that most of you are here for. Also, what Shauna and I are here for, frankly. Also, my thoughts on intellectual property, or IP, has evolved a little bit. I give Shakespeare a hard time here in this episode, and probably many of these episodes, but maybe he deserves it, maybe he doesn't. It just likely isn't fair to judge him based on my set of standards, something he would have never heard of. Still, I don't love how much stealing other people's ideas he appears to do, but as I'm beginning to understand, that was a lot more common in that time frame. And it's not like he had the internet to go check it like I use. Again, special thanks to Mary Halsig Lopez, Pat Rowe, JGP, and all of our patrons. We quite simply would not still be making the show without you. And for the rest of you, it's free to join the community. We are on Patreon. That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod. And here you are, episode 102, originally airing March 3rd, 2021, Beware the Ides of March.
Welcome to Bunny Trails, a whimsical adventure of idioms and other turns of phrase. I'm Shauna Harrison.
And I'm Dan Pugh. Every week, we take an idiom or other turn of phrase and try to tell the story from its entry into the English language to how it's used today. This episode is airing on the 1st of March. March has always been among my favorite months because it marks the transition from winter to spring in the Northern Hemisphere, and that is where I've lived my entire life. And I love spring.
It's the best. Well, I love spring and fall.
I also like both of those months, and we live in Kansas where we get, a pretty good dose of each of those seasons, although not always in the season. But nonetheless, fall is nice, but it leads to colder weather. Whereas spring is nice and it leads to warmer weather, which is going to win out if you're going to put those two things up against each other.
Okay, fair.
Though my favorite holiday is Thanksgiving. In fact, it's the only holiday I celebrate. It's Thanksgiving, and that is my favorite because you get people together for food and fun and drinks and yada yada. So lots of fun there, but still not enough to make fall better than spring. But this week I want to look at Shakespeare's line, "Beware the Ides of March," and dive a little into that portent of death and doom while also figuring out what the heck is an Ide. So first up, "Beware the Ides of March" is a line from the Shakespeare play Julius Caesar. And Caesar was a real person, but more on that later. But for many, the popularity of this phrase comes from Shakespeare. And that is absolutely true. Shakespeare did not originate this phrase, but he definitely popularized it. But like so much of Shakespeare, he had quite the habit of using other people's work and passing it off as his own.
Yeah.
Citations were a thing back then, just not for Shakespeare, apparently.
Yeah. How much of that was his personality, do you think? Because he was, trying to be funny and politically, he's trying to make political statements, almost satire, but not quite, and push the envelope. And so how much of that was him not thinking of it as official works or something?
That is a great question, but not one that I'm qualified to answer. There are some Shakespearean academics out there who could probably talk at length about that particular subject.
There are probably annual debates about it, probably.
Possibly, but all I see is a whole lot of intellectual property that Shakespeare stole and didn't give credit to other people about. But even Shakespeare, well, maybe Shakespeare was the only one who thought he would become as popular as he has. So let me talk about Gary Martin over at the phrases.org.uk site. And he says the first phrase of this was likely by English playwright and cleric Nicholas Udall, or possibly Udall. I don't know. I'm going to say Udall because we have a town south of Wichita called Udall, and that's
Okay.
how it's pronounced. So that's what I'm going to go with. And if I'm wrong, sorry about that. Nicholas Udall would later become the headmaster at Eton College. And so from Martin's site, and I will just quote a short paragraph here. Quote, in 1533, he published a textbook as a teaching aid for his scholars, Flowers for Latin speaking selected and gathered out of Terence. As the title suggests, Udall took examples from the works of Terence and translated them into English. One such text is, for Spurinna, being a soothsayer, had warned Caesar before to beware of the Ides of March, for he should be slain as that day, and so he was. End quote. So Martin goes on to note that Terence's original text does not include Beware the Ides of March, and this work by Udall was published 30 years before Shakespeare was even born.
Okay, so this was truly Udall's usage of that phrase. He created it based on Terence's
That
terms.
it does seem highly likely, and Shakespeare would have studied that Latin and likely came across it because it was an academic book, so he likely would have come across the phrase there. Now, that doesn't mean Shakespeare intentionally stole it, although the body of evidence doesn't really lean towards Shakespeare on that one, but there's a chance that he maybe he had read it there and was influenced by it and then thought he came up with it on his own, or maybe he really did come up with it on his own and just hadn't read this, but
maybe he was
he probably
referencing
did read
something.
this.
Maybe it was popular at that time, and he was like trying to reference something that people would know.
It
That's
could be, but it certainly wasn't written
interesting.
down as being popular at the time. So,
Fair enough. Terence was a well known. It still is one of
Yes.
the original, just big name playwrights. So it's very. It would be surprising if Shakespeare wasn't aware of him and researched him some.
Yes, either way, regardless of what Shakespeare's intention was, which is not the point of this episode, it absolutely was Udall that wrote it down first here. So boom, we've done it. Well, Gary Martin with assistance from Peter Lukacs from elizabethandrama.org did it, I guess. It's very rare that we can pinpoint probably the first time something was used, and I think that's a very interesting thing to be able to do with this. So good job to the phrases.org.uk team. So with the origin out of the way, what does it actually mean? All right, so the idea is that Julius Caesar, who was a Roman dictator who is credited with a critical role in bringing down the Roman Empire, is said to have been visited by a soothsayer, and a soothsayer is someone who can predict the future. The soothsayer tells him to beware the Ides of March because he will be killed on that day. So used figuratively, this means a warning of something to come. It is just used as that kind of warning, and oftentimes has been shortened now. Instead of saying beware the Ides of March, someone might say, oh, it's the Ides of March, and mean that, oh, this is a dark and gloomy day because of it being the Ides of March. But as we will see, there's nothing dark or gloomy really about the Ides of any month, and every month has them. But why would the soothsayer mention the Ides of March? Perhaps they were a true soothsayer and had seen the future. Perhaps they were in on the plan.
Oh,
I know, a little bit of dastardliness there.
that's some conspiracy theory going on.
We're going to see some more of those coming with the Ides of March. Spoiler alert, in the 1800s. But perhaps it was just a reasonable guess, given this information from History.com. Quote, if you look through history, you can certainly find enough horrible things that happened on March 15th. But is it a case of life imitating art, or art imitating life? Perhaps it was Julius Caesar himself who caused all the drama. After all, he is the one who uprooted Rome's New Year's celebration from their traditional March 15th date to January, just 2 years before he was betrayed and butchered by members of the Roman Senate. End quote.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, the Ides of March would have been a popular and enjoyable day to celebrate the new year, which, as most people are familiar, and I alluded to at the beginning of the episode, is the time that we celebrate rebirth and renewal of life, and coming out of the colder winter months in the northern hemisphere and moving into the warmer months and starting the planting the seeds and beginning, all of these different things that are associated with rebirth and rejuvenation.
Yeah.
And so he moved that celebration from March 15th, the Ides of March, to be done in January. All right, so now we know its likely origin and how it was used by Udall, and how Shakespeare took the line and popularized it for all of the world. But it wouldn't be Bunny Trails fashion to leave you without some examples in everyday life. So I wanted to pull up a couple so that you could get those a little bit.
All right.
All right, this one comes to us from the Richmond Enquirer, February 18th, 1834. And it is an open letter to the President of the United States, Andrew Jackson, telling him that he will be assassinated in about 1 month's time.
Wow.
Yeah, apparently you could publish things in newspapers back then that you can't do now.
You can't even say it now.
Right? All right, this is to Andrew Jackson, President of the United States. Sir, this is to inform you that I, one of a number of young men in this city who have conspired your death, unknown to my colleagues, write this to warn you of the plot, not from any intention to benefit you thereby, but solely for the good of my country, a step which, influenced as we are by sentiments of pure patriotism, myself and associates have deemed advisable for the welfare of our much abused country. I recommend you to revoke as soon as practicable all the opinions, declarations, and proclamations which have emanated from you relative to the rechartering of and removing the government deposits from the United States Bank. The alternative will most assuredly be your certain death. 3 of our number elected by chance will proceed in the course of the present month to the capital, there to put in execution the design entrusted to their hands. Even should one attempt to fail, do not think to escape, for we are firmly resolved to free our country from the hands of a despot. To conclude, beware the Ides of March.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a bit wild. The very next thing in there, which I won't read, but makes the same claims, just doesn't use our phrase. That is from someone who is a supporter of the president, and begins with, "I'm very sorry to inform you that if the deposits are not replaced and the Bank of the United States is not rechartered by the 4th of March, next you will be a dead man by the 15th day of March."
Wow. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
and it's signed your humble servant, and so I mean this is yeah. Anyway, I mean people post this kind of stuff on social media now, but. Yeah, I mean, this definitely is keeping in the concept of dire warnings and omens between this, but I always find it fascinating when we look at things that are put in newspapers, and if you have not, just as an aside, if you have not looked at chroniclingamerica.org, and that is the Library of Congress's microfilm site where they have chronicled loads of newspapers from, I think, 1776 until 1963. And there are just tons and tons of old newspapers there that it's a searchable database. You can go in and look for phrases or words or how things were used. And it is an absolute fascinating look into what life would have been like back in some of those times. And to see frequently in our research, Shauna and I come across things that are with newspapers being used like Facebook or Twitter or something would be used. And it is fascinating to me to think of how many times I've heard someone say, well, our country's just gone to heck in a handbasket, or our country's just, it's just become so much more evil or so much more problematic, or, this isn't who we used to be, or this isn't who we are. Except according to our historical record, this is exactly who we have always been and continue to be with relation to our violent tendencies, with relation to our rampant discrimination against numerous people in the country. I mean, the historical evidence is overwhelming.
Yeah.
That not only is this who we are, this has always been who we as Americans are and have been.
I think that speaks though to there's this continual drive to, even though for some reason we think that we're trying to get back to a thing that we were previously or had previously, there's still a drive to better ourselves and our country. And so I think that's a positive, in a way. It's just like you can't, as soon as people are content, then things will stop changing. So we don't want people to be okay with how we are, right? But yeah. What I thought of, though, while you were reading this is a quote by Dean Winchester, a character in Supernatural.
Oh, okay.
And there was an episode, they fought angels and demons. I mean, there's a whole big thing. But there was one episode where he said, "God save us from half the people who think they're doing God's work." And
that's brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know if he was quoting something else. But it's stuck in my head for a long time, and I think sometimes in the U.S., unfortunately, we could say the same thing about those who believe that what they are doing is a patriotic act, and so that's kind of what popped into my head there.
All right, so here's one from 1949, and this one plays tongue in cheek with the phrase in an advertisement for Pan Am's bargain fairs. Tongue-in-cheek is another phrase. I really like that. We should do that one at some point. But it basically means that it is not taking itself seriously. Okay, so this is in the February 18th, 1949 edition of the Nome Nugget out of Nome, Alaska. And this is an advertisement. It just says, "Beware the Ides of March. That's income tax day. And it's also the last day of Pan Am's bargain fairs. Phone Maine 12.
That's fantastic. This is a terrible day. However, you can get a deal on your flight.
Yeah, and it ends with the three words are phone, Maine, and 12. And in this case, the 12 was the number. Phone meant to call, but we usually didn't use the word call in the early 1900s because call actually meant to show up, whereas phoning or telephoning originally is very interesting. In the early 1900s, we see phone, they dropped the TELE and just put an apostrophe in there. So it's very fun. So they'll say things like phone, write, or call. And it's like, if we said call now, that would be phoning. What?
Like, but, what are you trying to tell me to do?
Right. So anyway, that's what that means. They're just like, call us on the phone is basically what they were saying. Here's the number. They just didn't have that many phones.
I think that they think it was weird, like to say text. Like, okay, what do you mean text?
Oh yeah, what do you text? Like write
like,
it down? I don't
send
understand.
A text? You mean like a what do you call those old postcards? What was it before postcards? Telegram? That's what I was thinking of. Oh my goodness.
Okay, so you said before postcards, which made me think you write something down. That is not what is happening over a Telegram.
Like a card pictured in my head, because like when they archive them, that's how they do that, is on basically like a giant postcard, or that's some that I've seen that were archived. Anyway,
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so all this still leaves the same question. What are Ides, and what then is the Ides of March?
Yeah, I'm waiting for that one. I need to know.
Well, we will get to that right after the break.
This episode is sponsored by our amazing patrons. Bunny Trails is and always will be free, but we are only able to make this content because of the awesome support of our patrons like Pat Rowe and Mary Lopez. Because of Pat, Mary, and many others, you don't have to pay a dime to enjoy Bunny Trails week after week. But even though Dan and I volunteer our time, there are still real costs to making this show, including hosting fees, equipment maintenance, domain costs, and more. And we turn to you, our listening community, to help cover those costs. To do that, we use Patreon, a service that allows you to support the creators and artists you love. Our patrons get exclusive behind-the-scenes content, early access to episodes, and access to our videos, so you can actually watch along as Dan and I make the show. If you are in a financially stable place and would like to support this educational art form, we encourage you to check out the options. We are Bunny Trails Pod on Patreon, or find links to everything we do at bunnytrailspod.com.
Okay, so finally, we've come to it. The part that everyone wants to know, unless you already knew it.
Yeah, but what are the Ides? What are the Ides?
What the heck are Ides? Okay, so I'm going to turn to dictionary.com for a little conversation on ancient Roman calendars.
Ooh.
Quote, unlike today, the ancient Romans didn't number their calendar days in order from the first of the month to the last. Instead, they counted backwards in relation to 3 days, the Calends, the Nones, and the Ides. Side note, I probably mispronounced some of those. Sorry about that. All right, back to the quote. The Calends was the first of the month. Calends is the source of the word calendar and is when the debts were due. The
Okay.
Nones were the ninth day before the Ides. This day was equivalent to the seventh day of March, May, July, and October, and equivalent to the fifth day of the other months. Originally, the Nones corresponded to the first quarter of the moon. The Ides were the 15th day of March, May, July, and October, and the 13th day of the other months. The Ides originally corresponded to the full moon, which is storied for its own omens.
Very much so.
So the Roman day of the month was reckoned by counting the days, including the starting and ending days, before the Calends, the Nonens, and the Ides. March 2nd was the Latin equivalent of 4 days before the Nonens of March. March 13th was the equivalent of 3 days before the Ides of March. March 27th was the equivalent of 6 days before the Calends of April. End quote.
Huh.
So, yeah, it's really,
That's complicated.
well, it was not, it doesn't seem like it's that complicated. You just count backwards from
counting
3
down.
different times.
Yeah.
And they would correspond to the moon, I guess, at that point.
That's
So
really
that's-
cool.
yeah.
If I've read some 15th century English literature, like poetry, and some of the ways that they describe time is always so fascinating. It's very beautiful to me, relating things to the moon or where the sun is in the sky at that time of day, and the like hour be none type of thing. It's just this beautiful, like lyrical language that was used, and now we're just like, it's the first.
It's the day all the debts are due. Although my
man.
mortgage is due on the 1st. So there is that.
You got to plan for that. You got bills on the 1st. You got to plan ahead.
That's- Well, yeah, I suppose that's fair.
It's probably true anytime your bills are due. I guess it's like it's whatever.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, you definitely get to plan ahead for all of it. That's why I budget. All right, so I also found a song that was called Beware the Ides of March. The band Colosseum made a song off the 1969 album Those Who Are About to Die Salute You. It's an instrumental, the Beware the Ides of March. It sounds eerily similar to the 1964 song A Wider Shade of Pale, but I suppose that's none of my business, and I do not want to get in the middle of whatever has gone on with that.
The algorithm didn't catch it, so it's fine.
I don't think they had algorithms in 1969. 1964 is when Wider Shade of Pale was released. So I don't know. I'm not getting in the middle of it. We've talked about Wider Shade of Pale on the show before. But yeah, so that's interesting when we
Actually
Trip
like
the
that
Light
song.
Fandango.
Yeah.
Because Wider Shade of Pale starts with Skip the Light Fandango.
Yes.
Anyway, I didn't find any movies with Beware the Ides of March, but I found numerous ones with Ides of March, including a 2011 film starring George Clooney and Ryan Gosling, which itself was based on a 2008 play by Farragut North. It's a political drama that conjures serious themes of Caesar, Brutus, and the fall of the Roman Empire. In it, Clooney plays a presidential candidate, and Gosling plays his either campaign manager or press manager, one of the two. But yeah, it definitely. I haven't seen it. I've read a couple of different things about it and read some reviews on it now, and it definitely looks like it harkens into that same kind of political drama that Julius Caesar's life seemed to be realistically of.
It sounds really like it's probably an intense movie, or something kind of like I don't know, very like more emotional, because I feel like those stories from the past of Caesar in particular are far more of an epic type of tale as opposed to the politics that we experience today. But maybe that's just being removed from it by the time that's passed since then. But this sounds, I don't know, it sounds like it would be an interesting movie. I'm so out of the loop. I didn't even know that this was a thing. This movie existed. So
I'm not sure that Gosling was like a top billed person at this point in 2011. I don't know. I don't really know how his career has taken.
Like,
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
no,
know.
George Clooney was definitely he was the lead, but I was just noting that I mentioned Ryan Gosling here because people will know who he is, but
But maybe wouldn't have been.
Gosling was not one of the top billed people. I had to read about it before I was like, oh, and Ryan Gosling is in it. What?
What?
Why isn't he mentioned? All right, this is another aside, so let's jump back into this. There is a 1948 novel called The Ides of March by Thornton Wilder. Wilder himself described it as, quote, a fantasia on certain events and persons of the last days of the Roman Republic. Historical reconstruction is not among the primary aims of this work, end quote. So,
It's fantastic.
so I get, there you go. It's a quite dramatized version of the fall of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, I've seen that in other texts. The historical reconstruction is not among the primary aims of this work, or something along the, similar to that phrase. And I really appreciate that, because they're like, listen, we're not trying to be accurate.
We're telling a
we're not covering
story.
Everything. We're telling a story.
Right. It's one of those very, very, very loosely based on a true story.
Right.
Okay, and the last one I'll note is I found this book in the Shakespeare Approves book series, and it's called Julius Caesar, Beware the Ides of March of the Penguins. And it's by Dan Kostelek and illustrated by Todd Brugmans. It was published in 2019.
Is this a heavily illustrated book? So kind of a...
Yeah, so it's written kind of like a comic book or a graphic novel,
Okay.
but obviously it's written for kids, so
Okay.
maybe comic book is right.
Yeah,
I know that the
so,
community gets really grumpy about the use of comic book and graphic novel, and I don't mean to
Yeah.
be offensive. I'm just ignorant of the
The-
appropriate terms.
I mean, the technical difference is the length. So a novel length is going to be a graphic novel, and a shorter
Oh.
book is going to be a comic, book.
It's definitely a comic book.
So,
It's like 15 pages.
Yeah, and or maybe even a comic style children's book. I mean, like some of those are just illustrated, but if it's got comic strips in it, that's the style of
Yeah, I mean, it's
illustration and
definitely-
writing.
yes.
Then yeah,
Definitely those like,
Kind of
3 or 4 panels across kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to read the book synopsis here because it's great. Quote, Shakespeare's classic tale of death of Julius Caesar and the fall of the Roman Republic, but with more penguins. As originally depicted in the short play of the same name, Julius Caesar, Beware the Ides of the March of the Penguins, is based on Shakespeare's classic plays, but with lots of nerdy twists and turns. Shakespeare Approves takes the bard's works and brings them to life in new and inventive ways, in books, music, and at Renaissance fairs near you, end quote.
Okay, that is fantastic. I have a friend whose kid, and he's in, I think, let's see, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. So
Wait, your friend is a kid who's in 3rd, 4th, 5th,
My
6th
friend
grade?
has a
Or your
kid.
friend has a kid? Okay.
My friend has a kid who's in 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade this year, and is obsessed with penguins. Just
Oh.
totally obsessed. This last
Who
year
isn't,
for
though?
Halloween, he wanted an astronaut costume, but he wanted to be a penguin astronaut.
Oh, nice.
And so yeah, my friend had to figure that one out. So
That's
he even sent her a link to the specific astronaut costume he wanted that he felt would work best to be a
to
penguin
be a
astronaut.
penguin too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to spend too much time on this kid, but we could probably spend the whole rest of the episode on this. But well, all right. So did they end up with a penguin wearing an astronaut suit? Like, how did that go? Is it like an
Yeah,
astronaut suit that's
basically-
shaped like a penguin, so it looks like it's a penguin wearing an astronaut suit? Or
It's somewhere in between. So it's got a penguin-y vibe as a whole, right? But it's more of a penguin wearing an astronaut costume.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
it's a human wearing a penguin wearing an astronaut.
kinda, yeah.
Although the way I said it just now really makes it
Sounds
dark
really
and dreary.
weird.
Oy.
No, it was well done, and yeah, he's a creative kid. He's a writer himself, so maybe one day we'll be quoting him.
Nice. All right. Well, there you go. If we, God willing, we got, what is it? God willing, the creek don't rise. That's what they used to say where I'm from. Anyway, okay. I picked up this phrase because I was looking for spring idioms that we haven't already done because it's my favorite season, and it generally comes with warming temperatures, renewal and regrowth of the flowers and the trees. Those stupid like Bradford pears that smell like rotting stuff, but then they die off right after it freezes again. So then it's okay again. It's a return to my Zen activity of gardening and the promise of fun activities like kayaking and patio
Yes.
grilling and nature walks through Kansas's various sanctuaries and arboretums, all of that kind of stuff. And despite the doom-like portent that Beware the Ides of March brings, every month has an Ides, and there isn't really anything scary or deadly about them. except the fact that they happen to coincide with the full moon, which is its own other thing, but doesn't really seem to play in as much of a factor here. So, like many times in my life, I am going to ignore Shakespeare on March 15th and rejoice in the beauty to come with spring on the horizon. And that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks again to our patrons for supporting the show. If you want to connect with us, the best place to do that is on our Patreon or on our Twitter. We are at Bunny Trails Pod on all of our social media accounts, but we are most active on Patreon and Twitter. So stop by and drop us a line. Also, I don't know if we've ever mentioned this on the show before, but on our website, we do have a P.O. box listed. So if you've ever wanted to send something our way, you can use P.O. Box 1359, Derby, Kansas 67037.
If you have a chance, leave us a review on your listening app of choice or head over to podchaser.com where you can leave a review for the show as a whole or individual episodes of the show. Thanks again for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week. And until then, remember,
Words belong to their users.